Hey Tom, guess what? Half-Life 3 is finally here. Maybe. Actually, I have no idea. so real quick, Valve just kind of announced out of nowhere that they will be very soon announcing or revealing what they're calling Half-Life Alyx. So this is what they're saying is their flagship VR game, and they'll be showing it off this Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So there were apparently rumors of this earlier today, and they just finally announced that, yeah, it's a thing, it's coming, and you'll find out more about it very soon. So, Tom, as I kind of just hinted at, the first question I have for you is this Half-Life 3?
Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, they say flagship, they say can't wait to share it with all of you. But before that, they were doing those episodes, and we know that a shorter game like Portal can be an excellent experience that you're satisfied with. I'm going to say, though, that yeah, I'm gonna go more towards this is a Half-Life 3. How are your thoughts?
My thought is if it were Half-Life 3, they would probably call it Half-Life 3.
Yeah.
But they've already kind of screwed that up with the episodes, right? The episodes kind of threw everything off. They didn't even finish the episodes. So this very well could be Half-Life 3 in everything but name. And if they are calling it their flagship VR game, it does suggest to me like a bigger experience, like a beefier experience than what most people associate with VR these days. So I really can go either way on this. If I had to choose, I'm thinking it's not, just because it's not. They're not calling it that. But again, that may not mean anything. And really, it may just be a matter of semantics at this point. Like this could be a full-scale Half-Life game that, as I said, just isn't called Half-Life 3. So I really don't know. So I guess what do you kind of? I guess first, before we dive into what we expect of this. Are you excited for this? Like, what are you thinking? Like, this is a Half-Life game coming from Valve. Did this shock you, or how are you feeling right now? Because we both grew up with Half-Life, right? So,
yeah, I loved it, and basically to hear the news, it was just like, what?
Yeah.
It's happening? Because just 2 weeks ago, I finally went back and I finished Portal 2 because I think I was playing it around the time I got married and got stuck.
Jesus,
I just didn't go back, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, it's almost been a decade. Normally, I might play something when Valve releases a new title, and that I just sort of gave up. Like, it's not happening anymore. And lo and behold, here's a huge announcement. So I was just 2 weeks ahead, apparently.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, isn't it? Like, I don't think anyone... I think people are largely given up on ever hoping for Half-Life 3. And let alone maybe even a Half-Life game at all. But hey, here we are. Now, again, we don't know whether this is the scale of a Half-Life game or not. Or of a, like a proper Half-Life game. But I do find it funny that Valve really just can't hit that number 3. They couldn't hit Half-Life 3. They couldn't hit Episode 3. Instead, they're starting off with what may be a new branch or continuation, whatever this is. But I should say real quick that according to the rumor that came out earlier today, it apparently is a continuation of the Half-Life 2 story. Now again, so were the episodes, so who knows what exactly that means. But I guess the more important question here is perhaps beyond what it entails for the story, which we'll get to in a moment. What do you think this means for VR? Like, what are you expecting from a gameplay experience for this? Because they are calling it their flagship VR game. And I've long been saying, and by that I mean I've said it maybe once or twice over the years, that VR has been like missing its Mario 64 game. And of course I'm not the only one who's been saying that. It's been missing like its Mario 64 moment, like a game that shows why VR is a potential or is the future for video games. It hasn't had that. It's had a lot of like really cool experiences, a lot of smaller scale things, but it hasn't had like a single title that necessarily proves, that completely validates a platform. Do you think this is going to be, or do you think this could be that game, and what are you expecting from it?
Well, once again, that term flagship, I mean, I guess that finally kind of means this is a title that Valve's happy with, kind of to tout VR hardware. And it's like all along, VR has had smaller apps or smaller games that, there's been a game like Budget Cuts that was, really good, or other ones, but they don't just have the same value as something like a Mario 64. They're like really good games, but they just aren't that killer app to get people to go into it. And everyone always said, like, if you get a Half-Life with VR, like you'll sell like a jillion Vive headsets and get VR to the mainstream.
Right.
Now, the price, that might not necessarily be true, but at least this time around, Valve, compared to, let's say, Mario 64, that's just the first attempt at 3D where they did manage to somehow get it right. VR needs a bit more work to kind of make sure everyone's kind of used to it. And so maybe through the different games that the smaller ones they made up to this point, they've learned enough lessons to really deliver on a killer app.
Yeah, because they even had that Portal VR experience. It was brief and pretty quick, but it gave you a taste of how Portal could be in VR. And Portal, as you may know, took place in the Half-Life universe. So effectively, we've already had Half-Life in VR. This is old news. I don't even know why we're here. But yeah, I mean, as you were kind of saying, like this could be the game that kind of like that shows people or like validates VR as a platform. A lot of people have been saying like if they were going to do so, it would probably be Half-Life. But at the same time, that's why I'm still wondering what exactly this means, because if Valve wanted to make a huge statement, like this is the future of VR, they will call this Half-Life 3, I think.
One thing about that, though, it's very hard to keep following up and like do better than your last games. And Valve kind of always scraps their plans, like what they did multiple times for Half-Life 2, I believe.
That's a good point.
So calling it Half-Life Alyx may have relieved some of that pressure on them.
Yeah, I mean, actually, that's a good point. It could be like just a way of managing expectations. Like, hey, this is a Half-Life game, but keep it in check, right? Like, because if you put out Half-Life 3, people are gonna be expecting the moon. So maybe this is a good way to kind of sidestep it while still being a Half-Life game.
Hey, now hold on. I've just played Portal 2, the moon. That's possible.
Oh my god. So, what are you? I guess in the very general sense, even without getting into the specifics of the actual gameplay, what are you kind of thinking they might be going for here? Do you think they'll shoot for like a room scale type experience, or do you think they may go for more of a sitting down type VR experience? Or do you think they'll allow it to work in either? And do you think it'll be exclusive to VR, or can you play it outside of VR?
I just imagined the Valve Index being sort of wireless, and all of a sudden having some battery pack where everyone could walk outside and not be hit by cars and play this game.
Oh my god.
But no, probably not that scale. But I would guess maybe they would possibly announce a new upgrade to their VR headset, but you would still think they'd want to have it playable in the previous ones. And I would guess moving around in the room, because that's where the vibe really shines. Just sitting down, VR doesn't shine that way, at least to me.
It's. I think when people think of VR, they do think about that room scale experience now. It's like, yeah, I want the whole hologram experience, or the whole hologram, whatever that. Holodeck, thank you. I'm not a Star Trek fan, clearly. That's what people think of. Like, they want the whole immersive experience. However, for me, because I have a Oculus Quest, and after I've been playing with VR even before that. Like, I've had friends with rooms, with Vives, and I've played room scale at their place. And for me, like, once the initial kind of wow factor wears off, you're just left with these kind of largely shallow experiences. And I found myself gravitating more toward the more conventional games that are augmented with VR. I've kind of famously said I loved Breath of the Wild in VR because it just adds a layer to an existing game. Same thing for Thumper, and even to, I mean, this isn't quite a fair comparison, but I would say it even applies a little bit to Astrobot, which is an amazing game, which was designed with VR in mind, but more as an extra layer to it, even though, I mean, they went a little bit farther than that, but I think you see what I'm saying. It's a sit-down experience with VR, and it works super freaking well. And those are some of my favorite VR experiences. So my hope is almost like maybe, that they are targeting this for a more conventional sitting-down experience, because I think it kind of opens up what you can do with VR in some ways, or perhaps, paradoxically. Because in a room scale environment, you're running up against walls constantly, literally and figuratively. And I'm trying to imagine how Half-Life would work in a game where you're limited by your physical space, unless you're teleporting everywhere, like we've seen in Budget Cuts and a few other games. But then again, as you're saying, that's kind of like the appeal of the Valve Index, right? And Vive as well. So maybe they would just go all in on that, or maybe they'll find some kind of compromise where you can move around both virtually, like with a control stick or something, while also having the room scale flexibility if you want, and that might be a good compromise.
Now you're stuck in a gravity-dense environment and can only pull yourself to objects with the gravity gun.
Oh my god, wouldn't that be something? Yeah, well, is the gravity gun coming back? What do you What are we expecting for the gameplay here? We have no idea. What are you envisioning here, Tom?
Well, let's go back to the idea of room scale environments, where I'm sure Valve has played around with that a ton, but a longer sit-down game is probably more ideal. What if there's little bonus side rooms, sort of little features, where it would become more of a room-scale environment, but the bulk of the main game is, it does have you sitting down the whole time. That could be a workaround around that.
That's actually a really interesting idea. Yeah, you can have these like little, little side rooms, I guess, or mission areas. I don't know what you would call them, but yeah, set pieces that are designed specifically with room scale in mind. Whereas the rest of the game is sit down, and that way you can, have the typically huge, Half-Life style worlds. And Half-Life 2 had an immensely sized world, and I can't imagine trying to explore that at, room scale tracking. So
no. They've also been working on like more dexterity in VR, so I don't know, like Half-Life 2 at the time, it kind of blew us away with physics, things like lip syncing. It was just amazing. A tech showcase, like tech behind a great game at the time. I don't know if we'll see that same kind of huge leap. It would be amazing if we did, though. I mean, it's been a while since we've kind of just been impressed, and at that scale. I mean, VR coming in was impressive to begin with, but to combine that with a game where like you have a crowbar, we already know you can move a crowbar all around in VR, but I don't know, like figuring out the exact type of feedback that you would want in VR so It doesn't seem fake. Maybe they've done something like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. Half-Life has been at the forefront of, or at least was at the forefront of technology for a while. Half-Life 2 introduced, basically set the blueprint for how a lot of shooters should operate, including, adding a narrative to shooters, which is almost unheard of by that point. And Half-Life 2, as you said, was a huge step forward for technology and physics. It pretty much invented in-game physics.
Yeah.
And now they have a whole new dimension, a whole new field to play around with, and it really makes the mind race to how they might be able to take advantage of that. Because I remember, like, when they announced the Wii Remote back in the day, or even before the Wii Remote, I always had dreams of like, feeling like you're immersed in these worlds, like where I always pictured for some reason like a Zelda game like Wind Waker, and you could actually like, throw the hook shot, or not the hook shot, like a grappling hook into the environment to latch onto a ledge and swing yourself across. And we got a little taste of stuff like that with the Wii Remote, and in subsequent games too. And obviously even more now in VR, of course. But I don't think a single game has really tied together the experience I've always had in my mind of making it really feel like, of offering this really compelling gameplay experience on top of this really strong and compelling moment-to-moment feel, that makes it really feel like you're there, exploring this, this really immensely detailed virtual world. Again, I know we've had tastes of this, throughout a few VR experiences, but nothing quite at the level like that VR would, that Half-Life would offer.
Yeah, and what's surprising too, I mean, Valve said they're not going to really work on single-player games as much because people keep playing multiplayer games, and could this somehow be a multiplayer game?
I hope not. I hope not.
I hope not, but it's possible.
It's possible, and hey, to be fair, maybe it would blow me away if it is. But I'm thinking if they're calling it Half-Life Alyx, and based on the rumors, if it is a continuation of Half-Life 2, I'm thinking this is going to be a single-player focused adventure, maybe with a co-op element, but that would be an optional thing. So, yeah, I'm trying. I mean, okay, for one, you have to have a crowbar, right? You have to have a crowbar in this game.
You have to. If they somehow didn't have a crowbar, it'd have to be like a tease where you had it, and all of a sudden an alien just like rips it away from you or something. It's like, oh, guess you won't be using that anymore, or something along those lines. Like, like that. I could not see that not happening.
And I'm going to picture they're going to nail the feel of that thing. Like when you're slamming those head crabs around, it's going to feel great. Whether hopefully through the physical feedback, as you mentioned, that they may be introducing here, but also through the visuals and sound. Like they're going to find a way to make those hits land. Next up, though, as I think you were touching on, I think the gravity gun actually does have a lot of potential here, because it solves one of the issues of VR. Of like, if they are doing a room scale type thing, at least the parts in the game, the gravity gun is a great way to interact with things in the environment that aren't even close to you. Like you see a box far out, you can grab it even if it's 30 feet away, or if there's like maybe a lever, maybe you can use it to like interact with even more conventional objects in the environment from a distance.
And also, a gravity gun would be an excellent explanation for why, if you're holding an item close to you with it, wouldn't necessarily really have weight, just like you'd be feeling in real life.
That's actually a great point. You're right. I think budget cuts might have already kind of played around with that a little bit, but you're absolutely right. That's a great way of working around the kind of like disconnect that we've had in VR games, where like you're holding like a massive, like a heavy, like I don't know, a heavy gun, but you can't feel it at all or something, or a heavy object. So that's kind of smart. Good thinking, Tom. I'm trying to think what else they could do. Like, what if they introduce like maybe some kind of like drone type thing? So maybe they could, if they wanted to go the more room scale type experience, maybe they could have like a drone that's your like your eyes into the world, or your way of interacting with things farther away from you, and you can control it from, I don't know, a top-down perspective maybe.
Well, something like you have access to Dog, and maybe you send out Dog on some missions to go ahead, or see through him before you go out there yourself.
That's not a bad idea, right? Yeah, you could maybe act as like a semi-automated extension of yourself, where you have some control over him, but not direct one-to-one.
Yeah, or who knows? Maybe you get to operate as Dog from time to time, and it'd be perfect for the, as like a physical combat, like maybe punching with the head, like the controllers, the grips, or whatever they are now.
Right. I'm trying now. Like, so right now we're thinking kind of like within the box that we know, within the crate, if you will, of Half-Life. What can they do that will blow us away with this? Like, what can they do that would just really like prove that VR has a realistic future? I mean, I guess for one, this is making it like a full-scale game, like making it a full-scale adventure. But I feel like there has to be something even smaller than that, like some gameplay hook that they have that we're not even thinking of.
Something like force feedback, or just like it's hard with a hook. Like they could, in theory, have like a lower price on the headset, but it's a super premium headset.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking even just something more conventionally gameplay related that ties into VR. I don't know.
This is why Valve makes the big bucks.
Exactly. I really have no idea.
They figured out, good on them.
Now, how about story-wise, Tom? What are you kind of picturing here? Because Half-Life 2... Episode 2 left us on a huge cliffhanger for God, I don't even know how many years now. It's been so long, I actually barely remember how it ended. I remember the final, like, 10 seconds, and that's it. I remember nothing how we got to that point. I remember nothing else about it. Do you think it's going to pick up right where they left off, or do you think there's going to be a time jump, a time skip? And do you expect it to, like, continue the story events, or do you think it'll act as more of a side story?
That's a good question, because if it picked up right away, you'd have to find a very good reason for being Alyx and not Gordan Freeman.
Right.
Now, if they didn't have a time jump, it could just be Alyx, and you don't really have to explain what happened to Gordan Freeman, or he can come and help you.
Just skip Half-Life 3 entirely. Yeah. Yep, it happened, but we don't worry about it anymore.
Yeah, like... Oh, man, I'm gonna hope it picks up right where they left off, because that was such a big cliffhanger. But either way, I'm gonna be happy getting to play Half-Life again. How about you? Which one would you prefer?
I would like just to see them wrap up the story finally. Just end this. Just get it over with. Like, if this game comes out, we still have to speculate about Half-Life 3. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know if I can handle that. I don't know if I can handle years and years more speculation about Half-Life 3.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that this just that this is largely what it is, and like it at least moves the story forward to some degree, and wraps up the plot threads that they've had floating out there for years now, decades even. But you kind of brought up something I didn't even really think about. This is called Half-Life Alyx. Do you think that means we're going to be literally playing as Alyx? Because it could still stand that she could still be just a supporting character, or rather a character who's alongside you the entire time, with you still playing as Gordan Freeman, which I think might still be the better way of experiencing an Alyx story, because Valve's been all about the silent protagonists, whether in Half-Life or Portal. It might be weird to play as a protagonist who does talk, who's known for being a character, and not being able to see her face and emote in this game would be kind of weird to me.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, if you were going to be talking all of a sudden, that kind of goes against the whole Valve world. But yeah, I was assuming you'd be playing as Alyx. I'm pretty sure Valve could figure that out, but their silent protagonist route, sort of like Nintendo, has worked very well for them. So, oh man, would you, if you were just Gordan Freeman again, that would lean more towards Half-Life 3. So, I don't know, maybe you're just some recruit then. Could that be possible?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I do know though that I am excited for this. Like I want to know what it is, and it's not too much longer till we'll find out what exactly is going on here. Hopefully, although the weird thing with this, well, here's a thought. So when they show this off, it's not going to sell the effect of the game because most people aren't going. I mean, they'll be showing it presumably in standard video form, I would guess. But that's a terrible way of showing off VR. Like you can look at a VR video and even having played VR and still not be able to like fully appreciate what that will look like in VR. So do you think maybe there's a chance like a demo accompany it, or maybe like a VR based trailer, like some way that people who at least have VR headsets can maybe better experience what this game might be? Or I mean, I guess the thing is though, those aren't the people they have to sell this game to. It's everyone else. So this is gonna be the fundamental problem with VR is how do you sell a game on VR to people who don't have the headset and haven't tried it themselves yet?
Yeah, I would think a VR video, 2 people that have it would make sense, and just could a Half-Life that just raises the bar be enough to sell all the fans all along to get it, and if it became an affordable price, that would be the way to do it. But because you gotta spread word of mouth,
right?
You gotta have it spread by word of mouth about VR and have people try it before you appreciate how good VR is, as you said. So I guess if saying it's a flagship VR game, maybe showing off huge, amazing features, maybe they're hoping they can bank on that.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what they come up here with, man. Like, I mean, the big thing, as I said before, I think is going to be nailing the feel of the game, making it feel good in VR, and then also offering a deep, compelling story and adventure to go along with it. That's kind of like what VR's been missing. That's again why I enjoyed Breath of the Wild so much, because that's an immense game in which VR just kind of augments it even farther for me.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what they need to nail here. But there've been a ton of shooters already in VR, but none of them have been Half-Life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's going to be fascinating too to see how different the story is from that story released by one of the writers who no longer works at Valve 2 years ago. To see how much maybe that changed, because he just basically said, he didn't say it, but it's like it was basically like a plot summary for Half-Life 3.
That's a good point. I pretty much forgot about that. Yeah, that's the plot for Half-Life 3 was kind of wrapped up in a way by the authors telling us where they were planning on going with it. So yeah, we'll see if it has any bearing or any resemblance to the final game here, or what, maybe to any resemblance to whatever this game is, rather.
Yeah.
And also, I do believe that some of the writers with, at least for Portal, I think returned to Valve recently. And I forget if they were involved with Half-Life originally before that. So maybe this has all been building up to this moment. Like this is gonna be Valve's grand return to making epic single-player games and hopefully sell the validity of this brand new, effectively brand new platform.
Yeah, I hope so. But at the same time, if it is a smaller experience, that's still great. I guess I'll take it at this point, considering it's been 12 years.
I mean, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, again, I think it is intentional that they're not calling it Half-Life 3, so maybe we're getting our hopes up a little bit high here. So yeah, I mean, a smaller game would be great too. But I think everyone is hoping that this is just going to be a proper, like, full-scale Half-Life.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah. Again, we'll find out soon. Only a couple days left to find out. So Thursday, right? Thursday 10 a.m., I think?
Thursday, 10 a.m. Pacific time.
Perfect. All right, and with that, I think we're about done here. So thank you so much for watching, and of course, stay tuned to Game Explain for more on Half-Life Alyx and everything else Nintendo and everything else gaming as well. We'll catch you later. Bye.